What is the score? It's like 2024 years to nothing. That's that's quite a record. Hello, everyone. Good to see everybody. A couple quick things. Got a big episode tomorrow involving the history of 9/11. I think you should check it out. And a few notes. I'm on Hill. You guys brought him up a lot. I've checked him out, and I think it's great that that we're exploring new ideas. And I think he's got some ideas, and they're pretty strong, and they're invigorating people. And two of those ideas I think are not really being understood properly. And I don't have time. I'm not muted, right? I don't have time to like go listen to what he said versus what you guys are saying. So take this however you want. But some of you guys have asked for reactions, so I'm going to tell you. If you think that the story of Moses was made up, like on the spot, like in 4 AD, you really have to ignore a ton of other history. I have a hard time accepting that Amon Hill is actually saying that. I think that the people who are listening to him are walking away with that Boolean thinking he's saying that. You guys feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that, but seriously, the oldest story that we have in our vernacular that's ever been recorded, like the oldest one, is the story about a boat builder. The word boat builder in Hebrew, that word is Noah. And that the dude who built the boat, his name was harder to pronounce than Noah. It was Utnapishtim. And we call this the story of Gilgamesh. And it's a story about a preserver. And it really is the archetype of Noah. It's the same story. And so I think it's correct to say the story of Moses was made up in 4 AD if you want to say that, because you can't find a reference to it sooner. But keep in mind, when you're saying I can't find a reference to it sooner, you're looking for spelling, I guess, that the archetype would need to be. I think it's almost like thinking that Columbia and Lucifer are like two different figures, and that you get to say that Lucifer or Columbia was made up. It's kind of like that. And that was the first time. And I let that go because I thought that was just one guy saying that. But then I'm on Substack and I hear someone post today saying, yeah, Amon Hill's completely dismantled the story of Christ, that Christ didn't exist, that he was made up. And I'm like, okay, this is the second time I've heard this. First of all, if you want to dismantle the story of Christ, man, I say go for it. There's a lot of literature for you to do that. And you're going to probably end up on some kind of Josephus hill. And you're going to, Josephus the scholar. And when you get to that hill, you're going to kind of be like, so yeah, all of Christianity, Christ was invented here. That Josephus wrote it down. He was just trying to desperately create a story for the Roman guard, the one of the triumvirates. And Titus is considered one. There's what was that emperor? Oh man, it's been a while. But the point is that the whole idea of the fisher of men, and it's just Roman soldiers with a pike, right, stabbing fishers that were trying to get on the boat, and there definitely was a lot of ridicule. Rome required ridicule to elicit the religio. This word is a brand new word in Rome, and it was just the tradition of taxes. The taxes was more about, if you think what taxes are, it's just, can you not pick your nose in public? That's kind of what taxes are. It's sort of like, do you wear pants? No shirt, no shoes, no service is sort of like taxes. We live in a culture where you're expected to understand something as complex as taxes. And because of that, you are now sort of granted immunity as a citizen. It's not necessarily because you pay them, but it's more about setting the bar of where your intellect is at. And so in Rome, the only way that you could control a city that really had no like front door, it's not like you could like lock every single person out and have them knock and run through like a background check before they came in. So what did you do? You're like, look, at 4 o'clock, as long as all you fucks come out and burn something valuable in a fire in front of one of those soldiers and recite some sort of honorarium to whichever god or goddess or gods or goddesses or collection or entourage, any of them that you want, as long as you do that in the public presence. And we've set up all these base stations, community stations, where you go like a hot dog vendor and you come in and you're like, hey, I'm here to burn some, I got some good hash. I was going to smoke this hash and I'm going to burn it in honor of Stonius Amazicus. And the soldier's going to be like, yeah, you could do that, but you can't stand this close to it. And the soldier's like, well, why do you get to stand this close to it? And the soldier and the Roman are, kind of fighting back and forth about what's the proper distance to stand away. None of that matters. It's about, are you civilized? And another, I'm not saying Aman has, I don't know where Aman is. I think that honestly people just misheard. That's what I think. I don't think that you could be a doctorate in studies and not know about Gilgamesh. And it's not just Gilgamesh. That's just one. Mesoamerica, it's just full of boat stories, preserver stories. Ararat is Allah's Lat. It has so many Islamic connections too. Now let's get to Christ and we'll move on because I actually do have a show. If you want to destroy Christ and say Josephus created all that, first of all, man, there's books out there that talk about the typology of the Bible. I think it's brilliant stuff because I really do in fact, me, hand to God, pun intended, I think the story of Jonah was sarcastic. I think Jews are making fun of Christians. I think that Jonah fulfills this destiny of being the fool and that he keeps working it out, and that Jews are it's sort of like the literature is being thrown in a way to kind of say, look, don't be such a jackass. And you can argue with that. I get it. I don't even need anyone to adopt that. In fact, some people really find a lot of significance. But this is why I think the archetype of Jesus is there regardless of if he has the name. There's a couple points, okay? First of all, the archetype is going to be there anyway. It doesn't have to be called Jesus. It doesn't have to be called that. Je t'aime, I am. Je suis, I should say. Excuse me. Je suis, I am. There's Jesus right there. So it's like the archetype is showing through. Je suis means I am, but in French, but also Jesus is there's just an extra I in there. Who put the I in the je suis? Jesus, who put the U in the Ramalant, right? And it's the archetype's going to poke through anyway. So let's say Josephus made that guy up. He made the whole thing up. Dude never existed. I am still okay with that, except for you got Serapis. You got a dude named Serapis hanging out right behind Jesus. Got a beard. Got a hippie thing going on. He's just like, hey man, we got to relax. And the Serapis is literally like the Horus that's been Greekified, really. The maybe not Horus, but the I think Horus, because I think Horus is really before. Let's say you take out Serapis. Keep in mind that it was the Christians that burned down the libraries. It was the Christians. They're the ones that were like, we do not want you guys to recognize that Serapis and Mithras were already here. We want it to be our God. But a lot of religions do this. Guys, if you go to Luxor right now, you can stand in a room called the Holy of Holies. You can stand in there right now. It's an Egyptian temple. An Egyptian temple that has the tabernacle laid out. The tabernacle in the wilderness. Before the Hebrews got their shit together enough to build a temple, they were wandering around in a pop-up Coleman tent, right? Wandering through the woods, through the wilderness. We like to picture it as desert. Probably wasn't that really desert, honestly. But, Charlton Heston, we're going to do that. So, okay, fine, whatever. You're going through the desert. And there's a barbecue. And you go to the barbecue and people are collecting the blood and they're collecting beasts and you get an opportunity to show your faith. And when you show your faith in front of everyone, you build community. This is like Grand Central Station because it has every single element of community built into it. It has fanaticism. It has spectacle. It has intrigue. It has the ability to mate. It has the ability to have commerce. It is a functioning city that moves itself around, and all it needs is secrecy. It's got a tent inside of a tent inside of a tent, and only some people get inside the tent that's inside the tent, and then only one person gets inside the tent that's inside the tent. That wasn't invented by desert people. The people of Shazu, the oldest trace we have of people that were worshiping something called Yahweh, goes all the way back to Egypt, but then it stops because we just can't find any other words. But guys, if you do the math, you're looking at Luxor Temple, and the Holy of Holies is right there, which means that if you want to know the truth, no offense to the fine Hebrew scholarship that's been done, but if you really, really want to know the truth, then you're going to have to be a little bit honest here. The Exodus, the story of slaves leaving Egypt, is really the story of slaves ransacking the religion of a regime that was already dying. I put forward today that I think the pyramids, the Great Pyramids specifically, was a jobs program. It was a dying regime. What do you do with a dying regime? You insert some sort of propaganda that has some sort of like biblical significance. And next thing you know, everyone's working on a project like the Tennessee Valley Authority or the Manhattan Project or the Apollo program. I mean, I could go on and on. And that when you start to establish it, you guys realize, right, that before Russia entered the space race, they hadn't even built a fucking plane that could cross Russia yet. That in order for them to move one of their men from the west coast of Russia to the east coast of Russia took at least 6 plane rides. And that 7 years later, they are in the space race. And do you know why they're in the space race? Because they went to Boeing and said, hey man, can you fucking build us some planes? And Boeing's like, hey, let me show you how the fucking world works. I'm getting off track here, but so behind Jesus, 100 years behind Jesus? Okay, 300 years, I'll give you that. We'll say 300 years behind Jesus. You have Serapis. Bushy, Grizzly Adams looking dude. Look him up. I don't have a slide, sorry, because this isn't what the topic is. Let's take him out. Okay, fine, get rid of him. You know what? Mithras is right there. Mithras is right there. Maybe 100 years more. Right there behind him. Going, hey, what's up, y'all? I'm gonna kill this bull. Oh, watch me stab the bull. Oh, see? I'm the sacrificial heifer. I'm the symbol of the sacrificial heifer. It's Mithras. I'm gonna cut the bull's throat. All right? So all it did is Mithras went from here. Oh, look, it's doing the AI. It went from here to here. And now he's cutting his own throat. And then you have the story of Jesus. But even if you take away Mithras, you got to go back to Horus, man. He gave his life. He gave his only begotten son is the placenta so that you may live. The placenta died so you may live. This is a story built into the Narmer palette, for God's sakes. Like the oldest makeup palette that we've found. Like maybe it's Maybelline. Like the oldest makeup kit we've ever found has this reference to Jesus on it. No, it doesn't say the word Jesus, but why are we insisting that our archetypes keep the same name? Why? Because the truth is that archetypes are always here. They're the scaffolding of the world, which is something we're going to get to. I hope you guys are doing good. Is this even interesting to you guys? Is this even, it's again, I'll say it one more time, then we'll move on. I don't think that I have a hard time thinking that this is what Amon Hill thinks. I think that people just walk away with kind of a Boolean sort of takeaway. It's kind of like what I had said the other day about if you want to know which is older, Greek or Hebrew, I think it's going to depend if you're talking to a Greek or a Jew, honestly. I think it's going to depend on that. And I think each of them are going to be like, look, man, I fucking love the Raiders. And the other was like, I love the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they've got a lot of different Jews to show you which one goes further back. And guess what? It's all Phoenician, bitch. That all the Paleo-Hebrewic writing is just Phoenician. You've seen the alphabet. So do we want to get lost in antizones? Do we want to? Do we want to get lost in there's no such thing as Noah? There's no such thing as Jesus when there is? Well, like what I mean is that if over half the fucking world knows about Jesus, why are we trying to suggest that that's not real? Are we setting the bar to look, if you witness something, if everyone thinks it's real, it's still not real because of Joe fucking Cephas? You see, when you write a book, you know Pepe the Frog. Everyone here knows Pepe the Frog. What happened to Pepe the Frog? The dude who drew Pepe the Frog was like super liberal, super on the left. Like the most progressive cartoonist. I didn't even know they had progressive cartoonists, but they did. That guy hates the right. And he got so mad because the moment he drew Pepe, he realized what all artists realize, and this is if you're good. So Josephus realized this too. This is not my character. I'm releasing this into the wind. People are going to pick it up and they're not. They're going to decide what is right or what is wrong or what it's going to be, and that really you're just looking at a giant mix of mythology. It's all mythology. Guys, let's say that we get rid of Mithras too. Let's say that I'm on Hill. Again, I don't think he's saying this. I think this is just what people have just kind of heard. Let's say we get rid of him too. What are you going to do about Krishna? What are you going to do about Siddhartha? You have two icons that exact same fucking spitting image. Exact same thing. How do you unravel all these things? And then if you do we really just say, so archetypes are meaningless because Josephus wrote them? Because everything that seems to happen good in the world historically is typically a little bit of dash of fraud. There's a little bit of fraud. There's a little fraud. Who knew? It takes fraud to make the world go round. It's a fraud eat fraud world, right? It's a fraud eat fraud world. Let's see if anyone's really just want to correct me. Yahweh's from Texas. It could be, yeah. Yeah. Does anyone else notice that Noah being the builder of the ship ties the maritime admiralty theme throughout time? There you go, Lena. There you go. I think this is why our country closed, because if we follow maritime law, 322, the freaking country closed. 322. Yes, I am a dolphin lawyer. Good to see you, Best Pet Zone. I am. I'm actually just getting into orca law. Just getting into it. But I gotta be honest with you. Orcas don't need a lot of legal help. Those guys, they know what's going on. They know what's going on. I want to talk to you about cellular hallucination today. Yes, I do. And the reason why is because yesterday on the show, I got a comment. Someone was saying, hey, this is what hippies and, he said hippies and, what was the other one? Something else, I forget. This is like hippie talk. And I was telling you yesterday, remember, there was even a part where I said, I would say use your intuition, Roger, but if I said that word, you're going to go, oh, so I want you to guess instead. Remember that? And of course, one of the comments, and that's fine. I appreciate comments. It's great. But one of the comments came in, was like, this is real, it's too frou-frou, right? It's too new agey. Of course, I shouldn't say chakra. It's just a gland, right? And I get it. I'm working on that. I'm trying to, I hate that I have to use the word Aquarius with you guys. I just need a word to tell you that we've entered into a new era. That's all. I don't need you to like put on roller skates, and it's not like a Xanadu thing. I'm just telling you that if you just think about the gauntlet, I mean, literally the constellation is shaped like a corridor, and you walk in through the corridor, And so I use Aquarius to talk about that. And again, I'll stand by my language. It's fine. But I think it's important that I explain to you that what do you think happens when you're a zygote and you first enter into consciousness? There's a process, and for not just 9 months, for 14 months, you can't see shit. Your eyes, most of that time, there's no input at all. And only at the tail end of that do you start to discern colors and things like that. It's true. And the inputs, your taste buds, all these things are coming later. They're coming later as you develop. And I want you to ask yourself, what do you think you're doing during that time? What does consciousness look like? And more importantly, if you were suddenly born in your full faculties as you are now, and you had no eyes, would you just be patient and keep your eyes closed? I want you to know that I don't think that would be possible, that I don't think that the world would work if your mind wasn't seeing something from the moment you have consciousness. And to kick this off, we're going to go back to Mike 11 because I want to refresh your memory on this little thing. So let's watch this real quick. Thanks for being here, James True. Hope you guys are doing well.
What we did was we took some skin cells off of a frog embryo and we put those skin cells by themselves in a dish. So we didn't add anything. There are no nanomaterials. There are no genetic circuits being added.
I'm going to skip ahead. Maybe I didn't need to skip ahead, but it's actually at the end of this. Sorry, we'll skip
Platform. So the way they're swimming is they have little hairs on their surface. These hairs called cilia are normally used to redistribute mucus on them across the body of the frog. Here, what they've done is they've learned to row, and so the cells, the cilia are moving, and this thing is propelling itself. They can go in circles, they can go straight back and forth like this. Here you can see a bunch of them in their various. This is just tracking data. So these two are interacting. These are sitting there doing nothing. This one's going on kind of a longer journey. Here's one navigating a maze. This is still water. There's no water movement in here. So it moves along. It takes the corner without bumping into the opposite wall. And then at some point, for reasons that nobody can predict yet, it decides to turn around and go back where it came from. So it again goes along, does not need to bump into anything to know that it could take a corner here. And then at this point, turns around and goes back.
Right, you remember that. So a skin cell from a certain kind of frog has been sort of reset. It's been like liberated from its collective. And so all the ion channels have been tumbled back to normal. And it starts its world over. And I want you to picture what is it seeing? What does it see? It doesn't have eyes. It doesn't have eyes, and somehow it's able to navigate a maze. It doesn't bump into the walls. It detects a left turn and then a right turn. Then it has a decision, I'm going to go back. Is this all random? It could be. It could be. I have no problem with you saying that. But what is your mind doing until you have eyes? This is my point. You see, I won't go into full eye of Ra, although we'll have to redo that material soon. But I've suggested many times that the eyes are a holodeck, that we limbically pass permission into the amygdala to say, hey, is it okay if I draw this? And the amygdala's like, you can't draw fucking Cthulhu. This kid's 7, Draw everything else and then make Cthulhu look like a thunderstorm. And so your eyes do that. And as soon as the little boy is able to swallow more, it can start to show you more Cthulhu. And his terror is actually a regulator, a governor that you place if you adjust the idle on a go-kart. It's kind of like that. And so the eyes are simply, what can I see, not what is. And the reason why they're there is because it's better to have a thing about what can I see, because otherwise you'll get blinded, your eardrums will explode. Information that's too tenable would come in and put you into shock, for example. You could, all kinds of systems could shut down. It'd be very hackable if you didn't have this throttle gate. So you have a holodeck, Plato's cave. You send information down from your amygdala into your cave. That's why the eye information goes back to your occipital lobe. Then once it's in the occipital lobe, it's processed, and then it's moved back up through the amygdala, asking for final permission. And that's when she does an emotional, she meaning amygdala, does an emotional flex to see, hey, can I show you this? So she shows you a little bit. If you reject, you tell her by secreting melanin. You say, here's melanin, I don't want to see this, I don't want to see this, I don't want to see this. And the scene goes dark and everything becomes at least a little bit more tenable. And if it doesn't, it just keeps showing you less resolution. And that's why the albino doesn't have a choice. That's why their eyes, if we talked about the eye issue, I don't want to get lost, but I want to get back to this idea of, so what are you doing if you don't have eyes and you're hallucinating? That the decoupled skin cell, a singular cell, is hallucinating, and that there's something about the conscious spark of life that I cannot touch today and say this is what it is, but the conscious spark of life allows consciousness to be built in any shape that it can find. This is very different from a traditional X generation, what you were taught, the body works, in which you're told there's sentience that's centralized in the brain. And the Egyptians, I know you've probably heard this, but they don't even need the brain. They just pull it out of your nose piece by piece and throw it away. It's not that kind of organ. It's not seen as central. And Michael Evan just showed you that that's exactly how it works. That the same cilia that are shoveling Cheeto mucus are now swimming for their lives, navigating corners. And the only reason why they're able to do that is because the cell inside is simulating. And the more cells are able to collectively join, the more they were able to distribute their simulation collectively and hallucinate a better meaning a more pragmatic reality. It doesn't have to be real, it has to be pragmatic. In other words, the reality that's rendered has to service you far more than it has to be accurate. You might think those are the same thing, but it's not always the same thing. So you saw Xenobots doing a maze. The sun and moon are a clock on your dashboard. The Milky Way is the artificial horizon. The stars are a compass. Every country is an organ. Every city is a neuron. Every storm is a thought. When you are living a good life, it means that the cell is content. It is healthy. It is in full production. James, am I a cell? Yeah, you could be. I think that most of us choose a Z, choose a location on the Zoom scale at which to render our lives. And as a adult with a driver's license and a social security card and maybe a place to rent or to call home, you basically are at a eukaryotic cell. And if you're wandering through hostels or you're homeless, you're a prokaryote. And if you start your own business and you live in above the store, the furniture store that you own, it's a warehouse alley, and you have a little place up top, you are more than a prokaryotic. You are a multicellular organism, and that those multicells have coupled together, right? Each of them have joined together, and they form something that you and I hallucinate as a corporation. It's a corporation. Some men shave their face. Some men shave their yard. It's both grooming, but the person who has a larger real estate is going to not just shave their face, but they're going to shave their yard. And the size of that yard is congruent to the size of their cell body. Some cells are big, some cells are small. If you don't know this, cells can get super big. A singular cell organism can get extremely long, or it can be extremely small. That they're quite diverse. Their ability to stretch and change and morph and to fill a space is quite remarkable. So if you take this idea, then all cellular life hallucinates reality. This is what it means to be alive. To be alive is to be hallucinating. And so if you look at your cell, we could actually just see that this is the farm. It's a farm. And the farm has an output. It contributes to the quality of the cell's hallucination. So, for example, the border would be your property line. The mitochondrion would be the dairy farm. The wandering ribosomes that are loose in your cytoplasm are like Family Dollars and Walmarts, where you go in and you exchange a recipe, i.e. currency, in exchange for a certain protein. That's what a ribosome does. The cytoplasm is the jelly that all of the organelles, everything inside the cell sits inside of, and that would just simply be civilization or culture. And it's a gelatinous glue that holds us together in unison in some way. We can see through it. We can move through it. It doesn't stop us, but somehow it holds us together in that cytoplasm. The Golgi apparatus is a ship station. If we're living near the ocean, it's the harbor. If we're in the middle of a city, it's an airport. And this is the place where or if we're in a small town, it's our local post office. And we go to the Golgi apparatus to ship things out of our cell in order to communicate with other cells that are hallucinating their reality too. The centriole inside the cell is the infrastructure. It's the roads, the highways, the building codes, all the things that are necessary to keep the cell inside of a certain shape. It's the scaffolding that's necessary. The lysosome is the landfill. That if you go to the recycling center to drop off your garbage, You're dropping off refuse to a lysosome. The smooth endoplasmic plasmic reticulum is the financial district of your downtown. It's the software engineers. It's the people that are in the digital space. Creating revenue, creating special widgets that are software in nature. And then you've got your rough endoplasmic reticulum. This is your manufactured goods, the brick builders, your production businesses. And that all these would fit into the hallucination of a cell. Then you have your nucleus, your agent interface. Literally the only part of the cell, if you could think about what the nucleus is, the only thing a nucleus really has to do is be aware that it's who it is. And isn't this identity? Isn't this your name? Isn't this your social security number? Do you see how this works? If you were a cell and you had all the complexities, there's a lot of stuff going on in a cell, man. And you didn't have eyes, you would need some sort of way to hallucinate all of these different layers that are interplaying together. And the hallucination would be invigorated by all the other cells behind you, because when you were a little baby, you inherited, through epigenetic inheritance, you inherited the hallucination that everyone's used before you. And while you're inside the womb, you're learning how to hallucinate before you open your eyes. You're being told about stars. You learn to listen to the moon while you're inside the womb, and you understand, oh, this is the clock on my dashboard that tells me what time it is. And because I'm counting time, because I want to be alive, I'm going to want to simulate or hallucinate the effort I've gone into keeping track of time. So I need a fast clock that maybe runs once a day, and I need a slower clock that maybe runs once a month. And I need a seasonal clock to show me an even longer pull around. And I need a life cycle where the beginning of my city or the end of my farm takes place, that through all of these layers I would need to simulate what is happening to me as a cell from the moment I was born, when I developed my own Elohim, and Genesis tells you that story so well about just the journey of the blastocyst itself. And so Genesis is the hallucination of who you are. And every mythology that we have is desperately important because it is the centriole, the infrastructure that's keeping your cellular hallucination intact. Yes, it is wheels within wheels because it's zooming in versus zooming out. Let's say that you don't want to be a cell. Let's say that you have a larger needle for consciousness, and you were able to see more than just as a cell. You are now a multi-layered organism. And so now you would see the exact same thing, but let's put it inside the planarium, the flatworm. Your gastrovascular cavity would be the floor plan of your house. The dorsal surface, the top part of your flatworminess, is the roof. The eye spots, I'm sorry, I mislabeled this. The eye spots are your windows. The anterior is your porch. The brain is the office in your house. The protonephedria is the laundry. This is basically how you excrete things, how you clean things. The ventral nerve cord is the router, the Wi-Fi router you keep in the closet in the hall. The pharynx is the foyer, the mouth is the front door, the foundation is the ventral surface, the posterior is the garage. You see, you get to choose your zoom. And believe it or not, fantasy is your cursor. You're able to zoom, or your mouse wheel. You get to scroll that mouse wheel in and out by fantasizing through the parables of empathy, what we talked about yesterday, through the use of empathy. And one of the things we struggle with is we do not recognize that the house we live in is our own flatworm. I struggle with this. I'm more like, well, I can shave myself. I don't know if I'm ready to shave the yard yet. And so when you groom your house, you're simply zooming up to the next level, the organization with which you're a cell, you're a part of, and you're going to be a part of something. Or unless you've liberated like the little Celia swimming down, that's possible. Hey man, go for it. I'm not saying you gotta join a company. The biologist Louis Agassiz said, the transitory aspects of a higher animal in the course of its development reproduce the permanent aspects of the organ among adults deemed lower. That's really difficult, isn't it? What he's saying is that as an organism grows, it shows a transitory state between other lower, less complex organisms. So a fish, a salamander, a tortoise, a chicken, and a human all have a mid-stage embryonic similarity and an early embryonic similarity. Excuse me. And I had said during Ark of Noah that the Enochian seed probably has every animal inside of it. And the reason why I say that, it only takes one, is what I'm saying. It only takes one chromosome, is because that chromosome is an Enoch seed, which means it's perfect, which means every animal would be able to spin out of it. You know how you get it to spin out? You would simply decouple the cells. That you would decouple the cells and teach them how to be a fish. And you know what? As soon as you teach a collection of cells that they're a fish, they're going to remember they're a fish. And every time that they have eggs, they're going to epigenetically install the hallucination of you're a fish. And that's what makes you a fucking fish. I'm not kidding at all. This is not mythology. This is not symbolism. This isn't hippy dippy stuff. This is how would you survive as a cell? You would have to hallucinate. You would have to keep in mind, you have your own power bank. You've got mitochondria growing in your yard. And the better you collect the energy from that, the better that you feed it into your ribosomic, those layers, you're able to render a more accurate reality that serves you better, I should say, a more utilitarian reality, and that your cell grows. And so you inherit the mythology that worked for you before, which is why you inherit the hallucination. You don't inherit the real world. You inherit a 200,000-year-old fucking hallucination of the world. And if you can go take yourself all the way back, I hope you can see what I'm kind of hinting at here, which is that it would be very easy to install a fish simply by calling it one. You know this story of Adam, right? That when Adam comes online, he has to name every creature. Why? Because the network needs to know which words you've assigned to which collections of things. And until you let your amorphous, chimeric, egg-opening gene hatch out, you don't know what language he's going to choose. The same way that when we clone a horse from a perfect embryo, the spot is just a little bit over. It's not always moved over. I'm just saying it's not in the exact same place. You might think it would be exactly the same, and this is why transposons are real. Because the moment you expose that to light, it's a different thing. This exists in 3D, by the way, in Blender. You can change the moire pattern and just move the random key, and it moves the spot to the left or to the right. You can control that kind of stuff. So all of life is simply a decoupling built on top of mythology of what would make it work the best. Look at this. Here's a chicken embryo and a human embryo, and both of them have gills. They got gills. Why does the chicken have gills? Why did the chicken cross the road? Because he had gills. That's why. Geoffrey St. Hilaire was the first to show that human skulls have at a given moment in their development a number of points of ossification equal to the number of pieces shown by the skull of fish. And later, before achieving its complete development, the fetus passes through a series of forms that recall final forms of less perfect animals. That's said better, I think. All of this is hallucination. All of it is. During human embryo and fetal development, you look like this. You look like a towerette. What is a towerette, James? Towerette is the crocodile boob goddess from Egypt. And towerette is supposed to be an animal that you encounter at the moment of birth, that Tauret eats children. And somehow, through the oracle of mythology, we knew that when a human embryo is first born, it looks like a Tauret. It looks like a lizard creature with boobs. And that somehow this Tauret, if it doesn't eat itself, is going to survive and become a human. One of these is an alligator, the other's a human. You probably know which, but still, they're pretty close, right? I mean, come on, they're close. So this is a sound scale. Set your frequency to gerbil. Now, if you were hallucinating and you were living in a 5-week-old fetus, like on the right, the terrain of your Earth would have a coastline. Your body you would need to render a coastline inside of yourself. In other words, what do I look like? Well, you'd have to go to every resolution point you could and say, what's here, what's here, what's here, what's here, and you'd develop a map. And where would you keep that map? And the answer is you would Big Bang that map all around you. You would create that map in real time all around you using memory. So you would then hallucinate every corner, every fjord of your skin pores. But you would do this when you're a fetus, when you're 5 weeks old. You would do this. You would begin the process of mapping the moment that you could store memory. So the moment that you could store memory would be the moment that you build your cosmology, your Earth. And the Egyptians said that this is the Tauret. This is this lizard boob god. Crocodile boob god. And it pictured that because we didn't have so much science in our head that we're able to augur the mythology easier. And so it becomes more pure. That's just what I think. I can't prove that. But if you watch how much you change, this is Elohim, 0 to 2 weeks, right? I'm a circular cloud of essence. There's no light or death. First there's light. Let's separate the waters from the waters. And that's osmosis. That's fucking osmosis. And then you start to come online and you're a lower creature. This creature could be a turtle. It could be all kinds of cosmology. It's only until 9 weeks that you really even start to resemble what you look like now. And so your hallucination has to change, but also it's being primed by the placenta. Your mother's telling you what to hallucinate because you're watching her hallucinate. You're listening to the smell of the hallucination and you're matching the glandular smell to hallucinate yourself. This is probably how we learn. One of the biggest proofs for this, I think, is this. The 5-week embryo has a brain that looks like this. It looks like this horn. It's almost like this snout. And the lateral view of the snout, 3 to 4 weeks, it has these 3 primary brain vesicles. And then at 5 weeks, it develops these 5 secondary brain vesicles. And that snout turns into almost like a toucan or a bird or a stork or something. It's like, that's the shape. And this will be the very first shape that you would have when you finally start to record your own memories. This is the shape that your brain is in when you first record your memories. And would you look at that? That in Egypt, the archetype of your first memory is a stork. It is a thoughtful bird. And that through the oracle mythology, we are somehow able to tap into the fact that when we first store our memories, we are Thoth. And the truth is we are, because we mapped our own brain and we've hallucinated it into an archetype that closest fits this brain, only now we're talking about it as adults, and that word is Thoth. That's the word that fits the best. This is why I started off by saying, look guys, Jesus is still there, even if you get rid of him. And here we are through the oracle mythology. We know that if you have a new baby, we associate it with the stork. We associate it with the stork because we have this hallucination is a part of everything. And we see this in the archetypes. Girl, you pregnant, says this one stork. I crack myself up. Because that was back then. The stork wears a hat. He's all official. Oh, you have a new baby. And now they just bust in when you're in the middle of a truck stop bathroom. And the stork just walks in, kicks the door open. Hey, girl, you pregnant, man. You be pregnant. And so, of course, the Thoth is all over Egypt because it's associated with that first knowledge, the first time that you step in. And it's not just Thoth. I just happen to love Egypt, but fuck, guys, look at the ventral view of the brain. Ganesh is looking right at you, going, "Oh, hello, welcome to the elephant in the room." Right? Welcome to the elephant in the room. And that the oracle mythology is just telling you about your own anatomy, which is why it informs itself. We did not know that we felt epiphany when we named the epiphysis in the brain. I'm not kidding. We did not know that that's where we felt epiphany. It wasn't until we invented MRIs. Do you hear me? It wasn't until we invented MRIs that we go, "Hey, that's a coincidence. Turns out you feel epiphany in the epiphysis. What do you know?" And when you try and tell a brain scientist that, they're going, "No, stupid. No. They named it that because of that." I'm like, "Bitch, look up anatomy. Where do you think that word came? How, a Greek dude in a toga wrote that down. Back when he was like, throw birds in the air so I can know what to have for lunch. He wasn't like, oh, this is the epiphysis connected to the syphysis through the endogenificus." And you know that. Wisdom is that which is remembered. Thoth writes the words of Amun. This is a beautiful hieroglyph, and I just want you to know what it means. That Osiris rests, meaning that the body disassociates. God decouples himself, just like Levin told you, that these cells are decoupled, they're separated. Remember, the story of Osiris is the Whore of Babylon brings Osiris back together. You're watching James True Live. And that the only way that the Whore of Babylon could bring us back together is if we were apart. And the only way we could be apart is if we used to be together again. So the resting of Osiris is the separation of all of our cells. And that the birth of the universe, as we're born into the baby, as we grow, this is the placenta. As we descend down the placenta, the very first thing that happens to us is that we invoke memory. And we begin the process of remembering who we are. And the Whore of Babylon restores us, and we would hallucinate it as if all of a sudden everyone could make a phone call to anyone else in the world. That's how it would start. Then after that, you could send a picture to anyone else in the world. Then after that, you could send a video. Then after that, you could diddle each other from 3,000 miles across the world. And that all these would be hallucinations as the more the mycelium builds, the more the white matter that we talked about, the more the threads are connected, the more that we become interconnected is the more that we remember the Osiris, which means the hallucination gets more and more omniscient or omnipotent. And right now, we're about to develop an IPv6 internet. Actually, it's already there. But most of us have been living in IPv4. That there were 4 numeric codes of 255, 250, 255 to specify all the different points in our world. But now we need 6 because the fractal is so much more intricate. This is why I referred to the 8K kids versus 2K kids. You're looking at people that are hallucinating more because there's more to hallucinate. And you're looking at orthodox people that cannot keep up with 8K kids, trying desperately to insist it's a 2K world, which is fine. This is why the Thoth wrote all the constellations, because the very first thing that I think that you would be able to hallucinate if you don't have eyes, I think would be your brain constellations. The fireworks going off in your brain. That's what you'd hallucinate. And so the very first thing Thoth does is invent the stars, and then he invents a language so you could talk about them. So you could talk about them. Right? That's pretty cool if you ask me. So this hallucination, it's not actually just hippie whatever. It's a scientific theory I have about how we render the world. And it's been proven through time. This is why we used to see color. We used to not see colors, and then we do. This is why we're always constantly fighting over paradigm shifts. This is why fad diets keep working, even though all you do is change one little thing. They keep working because the novelty of it is proving to you that the hallucination doesn't care what the facts are. It actually wasn't that if you squeeze a lemon in your eye every day for 30 days, you lose 10 pounds. That's actually not what did it. It was the novelty of wondering if you would lose weight if you gambled on something, and that gambling causes the thalamus to say, hey, this guy's probably pretty serious. He's fucking squeezing a lemon in his eye. Maybe we should burn a few. Let's have a Holocaust. Let's go down to the ass crack and let's just kill a bunch of, let's run a Pied Piper, and let's take those calories down the river, and see who wants to burn. And yesterday when I was talking to you about blind sight, I told you, and I'll say it again because it's important. There are pathways in your fucking brain right now that you can see. One of them happens when you get startled. You're just sitting there. That's it. That's one of those pathways. And I want you to imagine that, what if you weren't afraid of that? What if you could get so subtly tuned in to your hallucination that you can actually start to use those pathways?